Welcome to the first of 3 episodes about UNS, Unified Namespace. In this room, next to me, David and Deon. David, as one of the authors of the IT/OT Insider and also working within Analytics for Industry.
Yep.
Welcome. David will share his opinion and his thoughts on UNS. And next to him, Deon. Deon, over 30 years experience, I think, in automation in general.
That's true, yes.
And I think you also have an opinion on Unified Namespace, correct?
Definitely, I've been following the topic very detailed, and we see it everywhere. So I have opinion, yes, of course.
Good. So what we're going to do is we're going to share our opinions, our thoughts.
Yeah.
We're not telling this is what it is. We're just going to share what we think of a topic which is today, I think, hot. Everybody talks about it. Maybe in some cases in the wrong way. Maybe they're misusing UNS, and let's try to demystify it. And so, for your information, this is the first of 3 episodes. In the second episode, we will go more into UNS in a SCADA environment, and the third one will zoom into data ops and analytics. So, David, what are your thoughts on UNS? Share them, please, with us.
Very simple. It's about reducing data spaghetti, you say. So it's about having a centralized way to store data and to access that data with context. And it's actually, I would say, we can go deeper, but having centralized access to contextualized data, that's more or less my take on building a unified namespace. Now, if you look today on the internet, the more popular definition would be to have a data broker somewhere in the middle, and I'm sure we're going to touch about that on that topic later on. But it's about a data broker depicting data from the entire business, so IT plus OT, as it is right now, which means it's a pub substructure, which means the current or latest value. I don't think that's perfect enough. I prefer to go with my definition, centralized access in a contextualized way.
And that should be the message. That's what if you would put one thing on the table, that is the message you want to leave on the table. This is what UNS is. This is what Unified Namespace is.
In my opinion, that's how it should be.
Good. Deon, what are your thoughts?
For me, we need to see UNS as that it solves a problem that has existed for a long time, and giving access to people to data and to information in a contextualized way, in a manner that is easier to get to the data. Right now, everybody has a concept of what UNS is, and it has a structure into it, and everybody is always saying they've done it forever. But if they've done it forever, why have we struggled to get the data? So UNS is now, we should see it as a way to give people access to information that's always been there, but we're now making it easier to see and structure the data.
So it's all about access, easy access, contextualized
finding
access.
it, and because every system has a way of looking at its data set. But if another system needs access to that data set, it's not always the same. And the unified namespace helps you to divorce the distinction between the data sets and different systems, but they can share seamlessly with each other because you create a unified way of looking at the data sets. And it's not, also UNS is not a naming convention. It doesn't tell you need a naming convention. You just need to have a way to manage your data in such a way that other people or other systems have access to it.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So if I browse the internet, UNS seems to be the golden bullet. It's the solution for every single company. David, your thoughts on that? Is it the golden bullet? Is it the solution for all?
No, definitely not. And I think there are a couple. I would say there are pros and cons, and there is also a difference in I would say the starting point the company is at. Let me begin with I would say the starting point someone is at. It is easy to say that everybody needs to buy solution A, B, or C, but everybody starts from another. I would say from another position, and to make it like very black and white. I could go with the companies who, I would say, in their past invested heavily in OT. They have a SCADA layer, they have a DCS layer, they have historians, etc. in place, versus those companies who from their past didn't really had to integrate data sources. For example, a small bakery where you have a couple of units, and you just procure those units from vendor A, B, C, or D, and they come,
And that's it.
And that's it, right? So I would say that's, at least from my perspective, the first differentiator is: do you already have a foundation, a basis in place, versus are you starting from scratch? That's a huge difference, because if you have a base, if you have a basis in place, then you don't want to throw that out. You want to build on top of your existing capabilities.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen similar experiences.
I agree. Most companies that we work with is brownfields, which means they have infrastructure, they have data sets, and UNS is not saying so rip all of that out and put a new way in. It's how do I complement and augment that information sets or data or applications to better be utilized for people to do their AIs and the analysis that they need. So it's augmenting it, like David said. Everybody has something already. UNS can complement that, but you don't need to rip out everything that you had in the past to put a UNS down. It can complement it, but you have to have a starting point.
So does that mean that it can act like a wrapper around your existing environment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also like the word wrapper, because that can mean a lot of things. I think one of the things we really want to touch here is the fact that UNS is not a product.
True.
Agreed, yeah.
You cannot buy a UNS off the shelf. It's also not a protocol. Unfortunately, and I really, really mean that, unfortunately, there are too many people who, I would say there is this apparent one-on-one link between MQTT and UNS.
Yes.
It shouldn't. And three, I think one very important thing to mention is also, and that's more from a data analysis perspective, or from an MES perspective, is where does your historical data live? You can have this wrapper. The wrapper will basically be about data integration and putting naming conventions, data structures in place, but you still need to have that data stored somewhere and then again be readily available for everybody to use with that same structure.
Yeah, it's also important to remember that a UNS doesn't store data. It's a current live view of what's happening in your facility from all the different data points. It's not a storage mechanism. It's not a historian. It's a method of understanding what's happening right now in the business.
Yeah.
With or having access to the information. So you don't buy it and buy the storage capability. And I think to add to the protocol thing is that MQTT is certainly helping you to roll it out easier rather than a one-to-one link with UNS.
Absolutely. And here again, I think MQTT definitely has its place in the industry, and we see it a bit more with with IoT devices, connected devices. Although many PLCs now also support MQTT out of the box. Same for OPC UA, by the way, and of course also the older OPC versions. Now the interesting thing is that suppose you start with MQTT, there is no defined way of structuring data in an MQTT payload.
No.
It is basically like just do your thing. So if we take one step back and we go back to the data context, data management type of thing, then a concept like ISA 95, and actually I think it's invented somewhere in the 90s or so, a concept like ISA 95 still remains super relevant.
Yeah, nobody's ever come up with a better way of doing it than the ISO 95 because it's so fundamental to how operations are structured. But systems aren't always structured that way.
No. So, and then that means that if you approach such a data integration project, like how do you approach it? Do you approach it from a pure technical angle? Like let's buy a piece of software which is able to integrate, and there is so many on the market available right now, versus do you approach it from a data modeling perspective first? And then if you approach it from a data modeling perspective, who decides on the data model?
Who owns the naming standard, IT or OT?
Who owns,
Yeah.
who owns the naming?
Yeah.
And even in multinational companies, like, will we then start building a local standard? Will we build a global? It's really difficult.
Interesting, and just for the audience, I think those guys can go on for ages. So, if we're gonna kind of summarize, David and Dale, if we're gonna summarize, what would be your your final remark for this session? Because in the next session, we'll be talking about UNS in combination with SCADA, and the session after that, we're gonna talk about UNS in combination with data ops and analytics. So, is there like a final thought you want to leave with the audience?
I think what I want to leave people with, just say, if you want to do in UNS, just start. Because there's so much hype around it that if you don't start, you will worry about the hype. So decide what technology you want to use, decide what protocols you use, decide a naming convention, just start. And then over time, this will evolve into something bigger, and then you can readjust. It's really just start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's maybe an older saying, but start small, think big, is also definitely the case here. However, think big is not optional.
Yeah.
And what I mean with that is, if you just jump in, you go like whatever. Then you get in this never-ending pilot, this building pilots, not being. So that means that in the think big part, you need to know where you're heading towards.
Yeah, you need to have the end state in mind.
End state in mind, have a technology which is able to scale in mind.
Okay, so put a spot somewhere at the horizon and then act.
Yes.
Instead of talk, just act, just do it. Okay, well, David, Deon, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I highly appreciate it. At least it gave me some good insights on what the Unified Namespace is. And for the audience, if you're interested, there will be 2 more sessions, one on UNS with SCADA, as mentioned, and one on UNS with data ops. So thank you very much, and hope to see you all soon.